Hello again. It's Crew Call here on Motor Racing Network, taking you into the garage and talking to the men and women who turn the wrenches on these race cars. I'm pit road reporter for Motor Racing Network, Steve Post, joined by 25-time and championship-winning crew chief Todd Gordon on this program. First off, Todd, welcome into Crew Call. Good to have you. Good to have you joining on this podcast, broadcast, whatever we're calling these things these
Looking
days.
forward to seeing how I can add to this. You do such a great job with it, but try to put a little technical side into some of the questions we can ask and some of these people we can talk to.
I guess my first question is, how are you adapting to non-crew chief life? Because the crew chief life is strenuous every year, this year even more so. How are you adapting to all of that?
Yeah, it's definitely been a change.
I bet.
The not having, especially this year, and watching all of the time that everybody's put into the development of this car and the interactions and the testing. It's not been an off season for them. It's been like a shut off season for me. So different piece, but cool to be home. Got some great time with the family and having an impact there. And that's part of what my change was. So it's a change though, as we're building into this race season. It's sitting at the house watching the Clash was a really weird experience for me because I felt like I should be there.
It is. I actually, Ryan Flores is a buddy of mine. He's one of the tire changers on over at Team Penske, and he was telling me that for the first time in 16 years, he actually watched a Cup Series race. So It was different. And the Clash, your overall thoughts on what we saw at the Clash with the car and everything else out there in LA?
I thought it exceeded my expectations of what I thought could happen out of this. I had some questions about a racetrack being that small and what would happen there and what kind of racing we'd see. And just phenomenal. I think the whole thing went off well. Personally, I'll be candidly honest. I thought the heat races and the first last chance qualifier and the feature were awesome. I thought there was not enough racing and too much wrecking in the second last chance qualifier. But people have different opinions about that. But raceable. I thought you saw guys side by side at times in those places, and I thought a 2.5 degree quarter-mile bull ring, you think the bottom would be the only way around, but just a phenomenal event. And I think a lot of things that NASCAR can take into digest and figure out what we can do with this in the future.
Yeah, I think it might be one of those sports changing days. When you look at formats, you look at locations. I'll talk just briefly, and Paul Wolfe is going to join us here on the program. He had a better day than all of us did because his driver, Joey Logano, won it. I'll talk more from an overall perspective. We walked in there Friday. You would not know that was a temporary facility. It looks like that stadium was built around that racetrack.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that just jumped out at me.
And iconic.
Yeah.
Iconic. I had Raymond Fox, who was my car chief, with Ryan and back with Joey. He's still with Ryan, and he shot a video of walking through the tunnel into the place, and Hassler was walking, his new crew chief, walking beside him, and you hear him in the background of the video he sent to me. He said, it's got to be special when Raymond's taking video, because Raymond's been around for 30 years, and he's seen it all.
And he's just neutral tone, shows up, does a great job, goes home, doesn't get into it. Yeah, if Raymond's running video, that's impressive.
It was really cool to see. I was appreciative that he took the time to send it to me, because it was awesome to see those guys walk.
That is cool. That is really exciting. It was a fun time for sure. The event, the energy, the vibe, the excitement, Ice Cube. I mean, it was a fun time. And the car performed really, really well also. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we roll through this program and really as we roll through these opening weeks of the season. That is obviously going to be the big topic. So let's do this. Let's step away. When we come back, Paul Wolfe, winning crew chief from the Clash. He joins us here on Crew Call. Wing Nation is the show for sprint car fans. Hosted by Aaron Evernham, Ashley Stremme, and myself, the postman, Steve Post, the three of us each have deep ties to the sprint car community, whether it's a connection and love for other fans of the sport, experience in the cockpit, or a passion and love for all things dirt racing. Each week, we offer up a live show on Tuesday at noon on Facebook and YouTube, a podcast every Thursday, and a TV show that airs Saturdays on MAV TV.
NASCAR Coast to Coast is a show dedicated to spotlighting the short track community across the country. Whether it's late models out west or modifieds in the Northeast, this show has it covered. Hosted by Chris Wilner and myself, Kyle Rickey, NASCAR Coast to Coast offers insightful interviews and fun deep dives into the what, when, why, and hows of grassroots racing in America. Offering a new show every Thursday on the Motor Racing Network's YouTube channel, this show serves the heart of racing from coast to coast.
It is Crew Call here on Motor Racing Network. So glad you joined us, and why not? Let's just go with the first race winner of the season right off the top. Joining us from up at Penske Racing, the Shell Pennzoil Ford was in victory lane at the Coliseum. Joey Logano standing on the door, waving the steering wheel in the air, and making his way from the peristyle down to the racetrack was Paul Wolfe, and Paul joins us here on the program. Hello, Paul. Welcome back to Crew Call.
Hey, good morning, guys. Great to be on the show. And yeah, what an amazing weekend. There's a lot of hype going into the weekend, as we know. And but with that being said, there were so many unknowns, especially from the team side. When we got there on Friday and checking out the facility, the track, it looked amazing. It was a really neat deal, but still, questioning what's the actual competition on the racetrack going to be like, right? I think that was from the racer side of it. People were skeptical of what the racing would look like and what we could do. But, I'm probably a little biased at the moment, but I thought it turned out pretty well.
How was the impact of being in the Coliseum? Just a different venue than what a normal racetrack is. Did it have a different vibe? Did it have a different feel? Just walking in the first time and through the weekend?
Yeah, I think, like I said, with all the hype building up to the event and then just seeing it in person and the feel when the grandstand started getting packed. I mean, it wasn't a lot of people there for qualifying, but as the day went on Sunday, it started filling up. And, it's unique for us as a team because we weren't down on pit road, like the norm for us. So in a lot of ways, it was kind of like, how a different feel like the Bristol dirt last week, right? We're like calling a race from on top of the truck. And here at the Coliseum, they had a section for us in the grandstands there where kind of all the teams went. So there was just so much different, so much new, so many unknowns, a new car, a new facility, new racetrack. We've never set up a car, at least I haven't, for a quarter-mile bull ring. So you're just kind of taking it all in so quick. And it was excitement, but like I said, didn't know what was going to happen. And we obviously had our work cut out for us. We didn't have a lot of speed in practice on Saturday. But I think our teams did a good job of, as we've always done, of leaning on one another, working together. We kind of had a plan going into the weekend, who was going to try different things, because at this point we got to be able to learn quick. We have practice, yes, but it's very limited. And the more you can lean on your teammates, especially when you have two veteran drivers like Ryan and Joey, that you can believe in the information they're giving you. That was a big part of being able to get dialed in for the race on Sunday.
And to build off of that, Ryan's new crew chief, Jonathan Hassler, was your engineer for the last few years, and had some impact there. I guess not last year, but years prior. That relationship's got to be helpful in keeping the two teams together as well.
Well, it's definitely a lot different dynamics this year, right? I mean, with you gone now, Todd, and bringing Hassler up, and now we've moved Wilson, to the 21, which is, obviously Wilson and I started back at Penske together back in 2010. So there's some history there. Yeah, I mean, it's all about teamwork. And with this new car, and like I said, so many unknowns, to think you're going to figure it out on your own, it's just not going to happen. Not in that amount of time. So, yeah, it went well. And ultimately, there's a lot of work to do, and we're still continuing to develop this car as an industry and learning a lot every day. And that's gonna continue.
Yeah, definitely. How did you, just trying to be Clash specific here, but How'd you like the practice session format, breaking guys up into 3 groups and having some time to work on your car in between the runs? Was that beneficial or cumbersome?
No, I think they did a good job how they laid it all out. You know, with a small track like that, I think those 8-minute sessions there, we were able to run almost 30 some laps, which, you know, the track was changing. It was a brand new, you know, paved surface. The track changed significantly from one practice to the next. The drivers are learning, right? Like, we don't run these style tracks with these cars before, so everyone was learning and adapting on the fly. Having that time, you know, it wasn't a lot. By the time we drove back to the garage area, we probably had 10 minutes. We made some quick changes and got back out there. And like I said, just kind of after all the sessions, we kind of sat down and looked at all the information we had and kind of put something together. And, you know, going into qualifying, we were able to lay down a great lap, but you know, Todd, how it is. Qualifying's 2 laps, and that doesn't mean anything come race time. And I was like, well, this is great. It gives us a good shot to hopefully stay up front and advance to the show. But, you know, as we got rolling there, we were able to open up a little bit of a lead on Larson, and the car seemed to stay under him pretty good. So started building a little bit of confidence in us, and I think the driver as well, as, you know, we may have a shot at this. And honestly, from our heat race to the main event, Joey, he didn't want to touch anything. He thought he was really close. Just kind of change air pressures up a little bit there, you know, for a little bit of a longer event. And fortunately, it drove pretty well.
Paul, I want to go back to Saturday because, and you shared a little bit the Team Penske approach with the various strategies, but in complete honesty, Joey, you guys were not good. And I feel comfortable saying that now because the end result worked out really well. Was there moments of concern, or did you kind of know that you had a plan and just kind of had to work through the sequencing to get to where you wanted to be?
Oh, there was plenty of moments of concern when you're 26th on the board,
Yeah.
and kind of all our cars were down there together. It's like, wow, this isn't very good here. And you know, fortunately, I think, you know, some of it, you know, the drivers were able to lean on each other as well. I think it was in second practice there. Ryan jumped up on the board there. But looking at his car, it still didn't look great, but he had speed. And I think some of that was just, you know, different driving techniques. And we kind of try to talk to Joey about what he was doing. And really just, you know, some of the guys, you kind of had to hustle the car too, right? I mean, not only just trying to get heat in the tires and those types of things, but you just kind of had to manhandle a little bit. And Joey started doing that, and we picked up a little bit, but we're still quite a ways down on the board. But at the end of the day, once we made the changes for the race, went into the race, Joey said, oh, now it drives like a normal car again. So the end of the day, a good car is still, you can drive it normal. And that's kind of what he did in the race. And it had the speed.
Cool. You know, looking at these kind of unique events, the last 2, Bristol Dirt here at the Coliseum, you guys have won them. You've excelled at them, and you've put it all together. What makes that happen for the 2 of you, you and Joey, working together with the team?
Well, I think it's experience first, right? I mean, when you talk about Joey and how he's you know, able to adapt to different situations, the amount of work he puts in to try to understand something new, right? Like he works as hard as anybody I know at being prepared for whatever situation. I mean, there's a lot of things, sure, we don't know. And we had the same, it was funny, we had the same conversations going to the Coliseum this weekend as we did like leading up to the Bristol Dirt Race of you know, what to expect. And we just don't know. But we also did prepared as best as we could and tried to, you know, be prepared for anything that comes up. And I think that's a big part of it for him. And from the car side, I don't know. I mean, you've worked with me for a long time, Todd. My approach sometimes maybe seems pretty simple, but just kind of look to things that are most common to what we may fight at these types of tracks, and just try to put together a plan of what we may work on, and then the other side of that is the teamwork piece, right? That I think we do probably as well as any other company, and that's all the teams working together, and that's something we've always done well, and that's a big part, especially when you have new venues or a new race car to work with.
Yeah, you talk about the teamwork piece, and you kind of build off of. I got to see a little bit of it, but how do you feel? With Brad moving on to other
Roush,
Fenway,
Keselowski
Racing.
I'm glad someone else struggles with that one because I haven't figured out how to say it quickly anyhow.
It's not Team Penske, and that's what I've
right,
known to say
exactly.
forever. But with him moving on, how's the relationship and the communication between Ryan and Joey? How's that progressed and developed?
Well, I think it's good. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think those guys have a lot of respect for one another, their talents behind the wheel. And, we've had more testing this off season than we have in the recent years, right? So we've had opportunities for those guys to drive. We've swapped cars too at some of these tests, with you're only allowed to have 2 cars. So one day one driver drives it and one car can have data on it, but the other can't. So at a lot of these tests, what we've done is we've given each team the opportunity to have data for one day. So that's allowed us to swap cars. So you have Ryan driving one car one day, and then we would just change the interior stuff out, but not make any other changes, just to get driver feedback with the identical car. Like, this, Todd, over the years, we try to match setups or do that, but there's always little things that maybe you question, right? Is the body exactly the same? Is this, set the same? Mm-hmm. Well, when you use the same car, there's no question marks. So that really worked well for us to have the drivers drive the same exact car to the same racetrack and get that feedback, as that, like I said, will be so important. You talk about going to Fontana here, Daytona we've tested, but Fontana will be the first racetrack with this new format where we're going to show up there and we're going to have 15 minutes. You want to call it a practice? I don't know. I call it hot laps, but you're going to have 15 minutes to try to figure this track out. That we haven't been on any racetrack so far testing that's similar to Fontana, right? So being able to break it down after that 15 minutes with what Blaney's thinking, what Joey's thinking, and come up with a solution, that's going to be key. And I think we know early on we're going to see comers and goers and guys that figure it out one week to the next. I don't think you can look at one race and say, that's going to be the dominant team now, because there's a lot of unknowns, and it's going to make it exciting for the fans. Definitely going to put a lot of stress on the teams as we're trying to figure this out. But, it was still a good thing for the team to get that win on Sunday, just from a momentum standpoint, confidence. Obviously, nothing really is going to relate setup wise to anywhere we go. Maybe we learned a few things of a direction, maybe for Martinsville. But honestly, winning at the Coliseum, I don't know, doesn't make me feel like we're going to necessarily unload at Fontana and be a dominant car. That's for sure.
Paul, with so much testing on this car and one race, be it at the Coliseum, is there, and what I love about racers is we push everything to the weakest link. Is there an area that you're concerned about? And maybe it's Daytona related, maybe it's Fontana related, maybe it's road course, maybe it's Martinsville related, short track related. Is there an area you're kind of focusing on that you think we need to make sure we're buttoned up there? Or just what's your overall assessment of the overall performance of the car?
Everywhere, every area concerns me, to be honest with you, because it's new, right?
Yeah.
Every area. Yeah, I mean, I think, we're still developing the car, right? And there's been testing and there's been their issues, and the teams have worked through it with NASCAR and the individual vendors on different parts and pieces. It's just still a lot of unknowns. I think as you look at testing so far, we had our issues with steering. The steering system obviously is totally different than anything we're used to. And we've had Joey's seem to be very sensitive to that in all the testing we've done so far. So going into the weekend of the Clash, that was the first thing I was expecting, was he's going to complain about the steering. Fortunately, wasn't one complaint about it, and that was good. So you got to do your best to be prepared for anything at this point. There's a lot of unknowns. I think as I look at the car after the race, the bodies, I think, showed to hold up really well. That was encouraging. You think about all the bumping and banging we had. We didn't have cut down tires. So I think we've made a nice gain there. It's hard to say, we had some cars get into the wall. We did see some issues with the toe link breaking. That was what happened to Reiner, his bent. They were fortunately able to fix it very quick. But I don't know, on a race weekend, I think there's still question of what's going to be allowed, with the DVP and how that works. In the past, once you're involved in a crash, you're not allowed to change suspension components. And so I'm not sure how some of that'll work, but I think just durability wise, the more we race it, we'll understand more. So I think there's still some question marks there, but I think overall for the first time in competition, everything seemed to be reasonable.
So looking forward to Daytona. You've had tons of speed at these places. You and Joey have had tons of speed at all these speedway races. Been involved in some unfortunate situations, but you were one of the leaders when you went down there and tested. It seemed like watching the video that came out of there. Joey and Denny were pretty aggressive and working through things. How do you see this weekend working out, and how much do you think look like the opportunity for some tandem racing at times may come back into play here, and how do you think that's going to push through the weekend with people's anxiety about car counts and damage?
Yeah, I mean, the anxiety from getting cars tore up has always been high there, right? I mean, and it's always a balance of how much are you willing to practice to risk tearing something up. And that seems odd with a brand new car, because you want every opportunity you can to be out there learning. But we'll have to balance that for sure as we go down to Daytona, because let's be honest, there's not an abundance of cars sitting here. I mean, fortunately, we'll have our primary cars, and at the moment a couple backup cars amongst our company, as well as our Fontana car sitting here. So we'll have to manage how much we run and how much risk we're willing to take. With that being said, I think we're fortunate to have had, a fair amount of testing down there, so that the drivers have had an opportunity to start to understand how much different this car is in the draft, because it drives differently. But I think the best drivers still know what they're looking for to be successful at these tracks, and what they want their car to do, what they expect out of it. And that's something that we focus on. Joey's, as you know, Todd, is very good at understanding that. I mean, I wouldn't say as a whole, as you look back at qualifying our history here at Penske, I wouldn't say we're always the fastest, but with great drivers like we have, they understand what it takes to be able to draft well and put their car in certain positions. And that's something we'll continue to focus on. The speed piece, that's still up in the air. I mean, there's obviously been an update to the Ford from the parity testing that's gone on there, which likely will give us a good bit of speed from what we had in testing. Obviously, we're trading downforce for drag, but I expect, based off of what I know at the moment, I'm hoping our speed should be in range based off of the testing so far.
Paul, I'm always fascinated by that, and I want to talk just a little bit about the rule change. I love following Bob Pockris on Twitter. Bob just does such a great job covering the sport, and he calls it a tweak to the front nose, okay? Can you define a little bit what tweak is? And then also, one of the things I'm always fascinated about is what is labeled as a tweak or a small adjustment, just how drastic that can be. So what have you had to change on that car as you get ready to embark on the season? And you say you think you have more speed at Daytona, but what does that mean for overall balance and how it all interacts with everything?
Yeah. So obviously, there's been updates and things to the rules since the original, I guess, testing amongst the manufacturers in the wind tunnel, right? I mean, NASCAR's goal is to, they make this box and from a drag and downforce perspective that they want all the cars to fit in as the gold surface. And I think as some of the rules changed with cooling ducts and whatnot, spoilers, right? I mean, there's been quite a few little tweaks overall to the rules package that I guess they wanted to get another read on where guys were at. It seemed like the Fords were off. We had much more drag than the Toyotas and Chevrolets. But it's very hard these days to get one without the other. As we know, with having more drag, we also had more downforce. As far as the change to get us kind of back in that box where everyone's the same, it's basically a modification to the nose front wheel opening, I guess, if you will, the radius on the fender there, which, as you look at new cars, new bodies, the sensitivities to different areas of the car are different, right? And sometimes it doesn't take much to make a big change. So basically, it's changing a radius on the nose where it meets the wheel opening on the front on both sides there. And it basically took a little front downforce away and shedded some drag with it. So it's pretty small. They've made templates to fit that area now, and eventually, there'll be a new nose that will have that character line, if you will, molded into it. Because the goal with this new car and this body is you get these panels and you bolt them together. They don't want to see you doing mud work or grinding or changing anything on them. You basically bolt them together and you put your wrap over it, and it's that simple. So for Daytona, we're gonna have the mod made out of some type of a filler until 5 Star is able to build a new mold, I guess, and get us these parts and pieces. So not a big tear up for us, but definitely something we'll have to do to get right and kind of see where it goes from there.
Awesome. Good stuff. Paul, we appreciate you taking some time out. Congratulations again on that win, and we'll look forward to seeing what you guys have at Daytona and on throughout the season. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you bet, guys. I appreciate you having me on, and let's do it again sometime.
Attaboy. There we go. Paul Wolfe joining us here on Crew Call. Stay with us. Wing Nation is the show for sprint car fans. Hosted by Aaron Evernham, Ashley Stremme, and myself, the postman, Steve Post, the three of us each have deep ties to the sprint car community, whether it's a connection and love for other fans of the sport, experience in the cockpit, or a passion and love for all things dirt racing. Each week, we offer up a live show on Tuesday at noon on Facebook and YouTube, a podcast every Thursday, and a TV show that airs Saturdays on MAV TV.
NASCAR Coast to Coast is a show dedicated to spotlighting the short track community across the country. Whether it's late models out west or modifieds in the Northeast, this show has it covered. Hosted by Chris Wilner and myself, Kyle Rickey, NASCAR Coast to Coast offers insightful interviews and fun deep dives into the what, when, why, and hows of grassroots racing in America. Offering a new show every Thursday on the Motor Racing Network's YouTube channel. This show serves the heart of racing from coast to coast.
Crew Call continuing on here on Motor Racing Network. So excited about the season. I remember Todd as a kid used to hustle home from church for the Clash, on CBS. It was a 15, 20-minute race. And boy, that would get you all buzzed up and amped up and ready to go for the Daytona 500. And that was a time where we had just CBS coverage of one Sunday to the next Sunday. But I'll tell you, the Clash this year really got me amped up. There is nothing like it. I almost hate that we have this weekend off in between, although that little Super Bowl will occupy a lot of our minds. But I almost hate that we have it because, man, it's upon us. It's time to go racing.
It is, and this is you talk about it, but you go back to short track racing days when I lived in upstate New York. This was you turn that stuff up in the garage. That got the race season going while you're working on your cars and getting ready for the season coming up. But it's kind of bittersweet in both ways. That it's odd. It seems odd to have this weekend off, but really lets everybody digest what we just had, and really that it almost builds some anticipation about what we're going to see coming up in the duels on Thursday, qualifying. I'm ready for it, but I think it's like a teaser, and I think it's going to make it extra special when we get the season rolling.
I think so. That's for sure. Always fun. Kind of interesting for you to hang out with a fellow Team Penske guy when you're no longer a Team Penske guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting dynamic you have there, right?
Definitely different when you've got a lot of these guys you've had 11-year history with, and Paul and I, our offices were side by side and talk a fair amount. So good to talk to him again. Really cool to see the success that group has had, and it's not by luck, it's by work.
Yeah.
You've got two guys that work their guts out, and the whole team there, the whole Team Penske deal. But good to see them have success. It's going to be anxious to see what happens through the